If you are experiencing foundation issues, get a free estimate from Ox Foundations.
State Representative District 33 Ben Robbins joins us this morning, and the first legislative session is in the books now. And Ben, good morning, first of all.
Good morning, Jimmy.
You lived through it.
we survived it.
Oh, wow. And it just ended with a marathon Monday.
It did end with a marathon Monday. It ended with a marathon Monday, a marathon Thursday, and a marathon Tuesday before. So we ran a marathon at the very end.
Now, Monday, you went from 10 a.m., right?
Right, went from 10 a.m. to the following. I didn't get back home until 2 a.m. the next day.
I guess family were waiting to greet you, weren't they?
yeah, right. They were long gone asleep. I don't blame them.
I bet. Talk about some of the accomplishments and maybe some disappointments for this session.
I think the accomplishments were, one, that we made it through. At the beginning, we had all the concerns with COVID, and we pushed through and managed to get it all done. And COVID, we seem to be on the tail end of that, which is a good thing. So I think that was a major accomplishment, that we were able to still do the people's business. I think that it was great that we could get to work. We were able to still pass some good legislation for the state. We passed the largest education budget in the history of the state of Alabama.
Yay.
Every teacher in the state is getting a raise, and every state employee is getting a 2% raise. So even though we were in COVID times, our economy did not take a hit, and I think that's a great thing that we're able to do that. And we were able to also pass the largest budget in the history of the state of Alabama, all while still maintaining reserves in education and in the general fund budget. So
that's phenomenal.
It is phenomenal. So we're on par to have a very good economic outlook for this year, and hopefully we'll be in the same boat next year with our budgets.
There were COVID dollars that designated for every state. What about Alabama?
Well, right, there's been several waves of COVID money, and we just received, or we're receiving our most recent round, which is an exorbitant amount of money. And that's going not just to the state, it's going to, in our area, to all of the local cities from Oak Grove, Sylacauga, Childersburg. Every city is getting money. Talladega County is getting money.
Do they get different amounts?
They get different amounts. It depends on the population. And so depending on your population, you get a percentage of COVID dollars that can be used on certain items. And we just received our guidance this week, which is just interim guidance from the federal government. We still haven't been given our final guidance from the federal government how it can be used, but it's supposed to be used for, it can be used for broadband, which will be very helpful for our area. It can be used for certain infrastructure, such as sewage and water lines, but not for road improvements, just for water. And to also help with hospitals, clinics, and offset any costs that were incurred due to COVID. But we're talking, we're getting billions of dollars for the state.
As in B?
As in B, billions. And the Talladega County is getting millions. So we're going to have a lot of money at our disposal. But as you can see with the rising cost of lumber and inflation, what that money was 2 years ago is not going to be quite the same as it is now with our large inflation. But there are a lot of projects that it can be used for across our area and across the state, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, let's talk about one item that you just touched on briefly, and that's broadband.
Right, broadband. I think I campaigned as hard on broadband as I have any issue.
Explain the term broadband so people.
Broadband is. We'll just say the internet, access to the internet. It's making sure that we have fiber in our rural communities, and that if you live outside of a city, you can have access to the internet. And not just, even our cities have trouble getting access to internet. But to me, it's a major issue in this state. We have to have broadband if we want to continue to grow and expand. And if we don't have broadband, it's just the slow demise of our communities without it. I'm happy to say that in my first session, I was able to help acquire $1.5 million for Coosa Valley Co-op, which is the co-op based in Talladega, but it serves customers all the way down to Fayetteville and into Clay County. It actually serves customers in Calhoun and St. Clair County.
I'm one of their customers, as a matter of fact.
Well, did you sign the petition to ask for Coosa Valley to start serving for internet?
Yep.
Well, this they have several phases, and this will help build out the first phase of what they're doing. So there will still be other phases, but what I would like to see, so I'm excited that we're going to be able to help them build their first phase. But what I'm thinking where we need to go now with the COVID relief money, we're going to have a sizable pot of money that's going to be spent across the state. I think what I would like to see is us starting to work to put together a plan for Coosa, Talladega County, and Clay County on how we're going to build for the future, so our rural areas now that do not have it or are not part of a Coosa Valley plan can get access to the internet. And so then we can have a plan put together that we can apply to the newly created board that's going to oversee the doling out, the paying out of funds from the COVID relief money.
Even less broadband available in Coosa and some parts of Clay County.
There is. I mean, Coosa, the Central Alabama Cooperative, they're calling it Central Access, has started to expand. They've started putting in fiber and putting out internet, which is great. But I'm hearing from some people about how they're stuck in this little pocket where Central Alabama is going to basically Flag Mountain. So if you kind of live past Flag Mountain, but not all the way to Fayetteville, you're kind of just out. So part of the Weogufka area. So that's part of what I'm saying. We need to kind of figure out how expensive will that be. How do we get to those people? How do we get to certain people in Winterboro or out in Odina and serve those parts of the communities and put together a plan so we can be at the drawing board when they're deciding
especially for our children, our school children.
It's vital for our school children. It's vital because as not just COVID showed you how important internet is, but as we move past COVID, we're not going back to the days of going and reading your school book and doing all your work on paper. We're a technological age, whether we like it or not, and we've got to adapt so our children have the best chance of succeeding.
Governor Ivey just signed the medical marijuana bill in the last day or two.
She did. I will explain. When we voted on that, I voted no on that bill. And the reason I voted no was not so much on whether marijuana can serve a healthcare need, which I believe that it has that potential to serve a healthcare need, but I voted no because of the framework of how it was being regulated. What we are doing with this bill, we created the Medical Marijuana Commission, which is a new government agency. I argued that we needed the Department of Public Health to regulate it because most states, the Department of Public Health does regulate it. So we were creating a new government, which I didn't see as a necessity. And then we were limiting the number of people that can grow, process, and dispense. We're limiting that to 5 integrated facilities and 4 dispensaries. So 9 total people will sell this product in the state of Alabama. And I just don't feel comfortable in making a few wealthy people even wealthier. I think that the role of the government is not to pick winners and losers, and we were picking the winners on who were going to sell the product. And I felt like that would hurt our consumers on the back end. The product would be more expensive and less accessible. And I argued that by limiting the number of dispensaries throughout the state at a max of 27, because those 9 could then get 3 additional sites. So we wouldn't open it up to the public to try to get more, that it would cause people in our area to have to travel to Birmingham to buy their medical marijuana, which would then put a further strain on our healthcare systems here, because as in Talladega County or Coosa or Clay, because they're traveling all the way to Birmingham, and then they're putting that money back into the Birmingham economy.
Now, your argument is not against the purpose of the medical marijuana to treat.
Right. My argument was that it's an unfair system on the consumer. It was a monopoly for a few individuals that I felt like was unfair, and it would drive the cost up and hurt our existing healthcare systems, because I want our dollars to stay here and not be going to Birmingham. And so that was the root of my argument.
Yeah. State Representative Ben Robbins, District 33, portions of Talladega, Clay, and Coosa County, is with us for a few more minutes. And a lot of people, and me included, felt like this was going to be the year that the people in Alabama would be able to vote on these gambling issues, but it didn't happen.
It did not happen. I don't want to place blame on anyone in particular or any group specifically, but I think that there was some miscommunication between certain parties and groups on what they wanted in the bills, what they didn't want in the bills, and there was just a breakdown of communication. I think that a standalone lottery bill would have passed overwhelmingly throughout the state. I think that there is a little more hesitancy in the state on casinos and outright gaming. So I think that created some issues with people within the legislature on whether to vote for a lottery or gaming. And I agree. I thought this was going to be the year that we were going to get a product out for the public to vote on, but it just didn't pan out.
Well, I'm sure it'll be back next year.
I'm sure it'll be back next year. It'll be back next year, and if we don't pass it next year, it'll be back the next year and the next year. So
absolutely.
We need to do something to address the concerns of the public.
Any conversations or thoughts on a possible special session later in the year?
There's for sure going to be a special session. We're going to have at least one, which will be to redistrict. So every 10 years after the census, you have to redistrict because populations change. So we still haven't even gotten the final census data. We know the total population of the state, but we don't know the population of Talladega County or Sylacauga.
Really?
So the numbers haven't been crunched down far enough for us. So then that makes it, as soon as we get those, and they're saying that'll probably be about September that we redistrict. But they're saying...
You got a feel on that?
I based upon, it's a great thing that we actually kept all 7 congressional seats. That means we're not going to lose any electoral votes. We're going to keep all our federal funding because there was a fear that we were going to go from 7 representatives to 6. So it was great that we actually grew a little bit more than expected. We're over 5 million people now in Alabama. But I know the population... I think we've lost a little population, so District 33 is going to have to get a little bigger. I don't know what direction it's going to go or where it's going to go, but it's going to have to get a little bit bigger. I would like to keep it in the counties in which I currently represent as opposed to having to go to new counties.
Absolutely. Other thoughts on the session that just ended?
I think that I understand why the public is frustrated about gaming and the lottery, but I think, well, as I mentioned before, with the budgets, we still passed a lot of good legislation that's going to help the citizens of Alabama. From an IAS law, which will make sure that people stay in prison that have committed violent offenses and are not released on bail. That's going to help maintain public safety. From that to helping some young people get second chances in their lives after committing small minor offenses. I think that we had a broad range of issues that are really going to impact people's lives and make positive changes for them.
Governor Ivey introduced her project for the new prisons in Alabama.
She did, and that is we were probably going to end up in a special session dealing solely about prisons because Governor Ivey's plan was a partnership it was going to be private prisons with a partnership between the state and private entities. We've had several finance companies kind of back out of the arrangement, so that means that we're going to have to go back, or we're going to have to go to the drawing board as the state house, the state legislature, and we're going to have to most likely pass a bond issue to renovate or build new prisons to accommodate our prison population. And this is all due to federal lawsuits that have said we have substandard conditions within our prisons. So we're kind of under a gun that you've got to do this, or if you don't fix your prisons, we as the federal government are going to come in and do it. And I don't want to see what a federal administration, the Biden administration, the price tag they would give the state of Alabama if we don't do it. So we've got to do it.
Yeah, dealing with the federal government not always proven to be the best thing for some states, for sure.
It's not. It's much better when you can take care of something yourself than...
You talked about, Ben, earlier on about the billions of dollars of federal monies that are coming to the state of Alabama, and having a household budget I know that, if you aren't careful, you can spend that household budget. What is the oversight on these billions of dollars?
Well, there's several layers of oversight that we're doing right now. For the cities and the counties, they have the ability to use the legal municipalities and the County Commission Association in Montgomery to help regulate and oversee them. And for the State Board of Education, will help local boards of education. So there'll be a little bit of check and balance there, because last thing you want to do is use the money for something that you can't use it for, and then the federal government say, no, that's against the law, and you go to jail. So we're setting up in the state with our Ways and Means committees, which will create an appropriations budget. So we're having checks with the Department of Revenue and Financial Services to kind of help us, and we're using the U.S. Treasury for their guidance. So we're having the U.S. government and 2 agencies within the state kind of help oversee and help us with whether this is a proper appropriation or not.
Yeah. Finally this morning, as a freshman in Montgomery, what have been some of the learning curves for you?
I think one of the learning curves is, I talk, what I just talked about with the medical marijuana bill, I talk a lot about rural issues, whether it's rural healthcare, rural broadband, and economic development within rural communities. And I think that learning how to build a coalition around people saying, well, we actually need to focus and care about some of these.
Robbins can't do it himself.
Right. Some of these rural issues is something that I'm learning, and I'm excited about doing. And we did pass some legislation this year to help rural communities, which I'm excited about, but I want to keep building on that.
And finally, with COVID-19 hopefully in our rearview mirror, was there relaxation as far as the state house is concerned?
There wasn't, in so much as people didn't wear their mask like they were before, but we still didn't allow the public into our offices, didn't allow the public in to sit in the gallery to watch, because we still were spread out. I think that if we have a special session, we'll all be back in the chamber and the public will be allowed back in, which will be good when you're doing the people's business.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. Ben Robbins, House District 33 State Representative. Ben, it's always a pleasure, and thank you for coming by and sharing such important information with our viewers.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, always.
All right. We've got more Daybreak just ahead. Don't go away.